Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, my name is Alex. I have a Instagram and YouTube Blood Sugar Show. So I want to thank you for taking your time for doing this interview.
Thank you.
And for anyone who is just joining us, we are going to be talking about the album that comes out on the 13th of March.
Yeah. Screams from beneath the surface.
Very excited. I listened to it the other day, actually a few times, because the first time just wasn't good. I had to keep listening and listening to it, and the more I got listening to it, it just every time like the first time it was really good. The second time it's like every time I listened to it, I uncovered something new. It was very awesome.
Right. Yeah. It's, I'm so close to it that, and I've heard it so many times. I really don't know how, I think, sometimes, I don't know if it's going to go over people's heads, or if it's one of those things where it takes, a lot of listens, or whether it's going to, people can get it digested easy, so it's hard for me to gauge that stuff,
Yeah, for sure.
you know.
And today we are joined by Lee, and you're on the drums on this album.
Yep.
So
Yep.
awesome drum power.
Yep. Thanks.
Well, the first thing I like to ask anyone that I interview is how's everything going in your world? Just not musically, but also in your personal life as well.
Good. Yeah. Right now, my personal life is my music life, just because it's so busy, doing interviews and handling tour stuff, worrying about the designs of the t-shirts to all the way to, you know, flights and different things going on, festival stuff that we're trying to book. And so pretty much everything's revolving around the music. It does normally for the most part anyway. Um, the only thing I do that doesn't revolve around music is I'm working on my pilot's license.
Oh, that's
So
exciting.
uh, I'm kind of stalled out at the moment. Unfortunately, last November I soloed for the first time, and I was able to. Um, so I've got over 100 hours in at this point, and uh, kind of right where I'm stuck is the written test.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to in the school that I'm going to, they really didn't tell me that I need to become a meteorologist and you know go back to school for algebra and stuff. But
Yeah,
they taught me to fly the plane, which is important. So I can do
sure.
that. I can fly the plane now, and that doesn't, I don't have any problems with that, so to speak. I mean, you never fully learn, of course, but
Yeah,
um, it's kind of more like the like I said, the weather and all the kind of the book work was kind of where I'm stuck right now. And I just, once I finish that, I got to do like 5 more hours of cross country flights, and I got to do 3 hours of night flights, and then I can go for my real license and get finally get it. So
that's very cool. That's
yeah,
the first time I've heard that. So
yeah.
awesome.
But everything else in my life is pretty much music related in some form or another, whether I'm doing, playing actually, or playing guitar, writing songs on guitar, playing bass, writing bass parts, or
Mm-hmm.
doing graphics on the computer for the, designing a t-shirt or something, designing a booklet or doing a video of some sort, different little things that revolve around music. And then, of course, all the
Mm-hmm.
business. And so pretty much that takes
Oh,
a lot
wow.
of time.
Yeah, it sounds like you're taking on many
Yeah.
roles.
Yeah, my goal is to kind of cover everything, be a one-man show.
So
So,
are you also creating bass and guitar, or did you
oh
have
yeah,
anything to do
oh
with that
yeah,
too?
yeah. Some songs more than others, I've always written guitar parts for the band ever since the beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
this album I did write a lot of the bass riffs too. I came up with it, and then when we got in the studio, our bass player Mark, he had ideas that he, you know, like we didn't use everything that I wrote,
Mm-hmm.
we'd kind of take it part by part, and certain things that he would, we would use of mine, and then other things he would have an idea, and then even our engineer Jason Sukoff threw in, and like he had ideas. So
Mm-hmm.
some of those parts, would change as we went, but like I said, we'd kind of take it part by part.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're wearing all kinds of hats in this show. So you're doing the drums, a little bit of
Yeah,
bass, a little bit of guitar, a little bit of designing, a little bit of art,
yeah,
a little bit of flights.
yeah.
So, and it's been a few years since you've put in albums together as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of, normally back in the day, it would take us about 4 years. We'd, tour for a couple years, and then it would take us about a year to write the album, and then about a year to record the album. Is kind of how it used to go.
Mm-hmm.
We had a long break between Spiritual Apocalypse and Passage of Existence, the albums before. That was an 11-year break that we took, and um, it's kind of hard to really say what exactly it was. It just got dragged out. Things happen,
Mm-hmm.
like trying to, instead of kind of going in the studio and knocking it out, like with the last album, we recorded the drums in a real studio at Audio Hammer, and then
Mm-hmm.
we did the guitars and the bass and the vocals kind of in a home studio situation. I
Mm-hmm.
think, we're 100% happy with the results. So it's kind of a judgment thing, like, yeah, we're 100% happy, but it took a lot longer because we had more time and we didn't have a deadline, so to speak. So that,
Yeah.
it kind of dragged things out in that respect. But the end product is killer. So we can't, it's hard to argue. And then of course things like artwork that there was a long story with the artwork that,
Mm-hmm.
dragged things out, and then we had to redo the record contract, which took some time. Um, but and that's kind of somewhat sort of happened on this one.
Mm-hmm.
We did do the drums kind of at the same place, Audio Hammer, over in Sanford, Florida, with my buddy Jason Sukoff, and he kind of works with me where we take our time. It's like he doesn't stress me on the clock so much. We work out a deal basically where we can do it in a more relaxed environment and not be rushed, which makes
Mm-hmm.
it easier on me. It does drag it out again. It takes a little bit longer of a time, but the end
Right.
result is way better. So that's kind of how we've done that. And then like with the guitars, actually like recording the guitars, we did that. Matt Barnes did those at his house, but then we brought the finished track and kind of ran it through the amplifier at the real studio.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that worked, but him just recording it, he took his time and made sure everything was good, and so that dragged things out. So I think maybe
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to, I get asked this question a lot, so I've been trying to like, like what did happen really, because, but it's things like that, where it's like more of a, we don't just go into, like it used to be, we'd go into the studio and we'd book a week, and a week later we would have, whatever, if it was the drums or the bass, whatever parts we were getting done, we'd walk out of the studio with those parts done.
Right.
Whereas now it's kind of, because of the home studio situation, it drags out a little longer, but it's cheaper that way, and it we're more happy because we can really get the results we want, so it's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
balancing thing.
So it's kind of like a wine. Instead of just, being quick, it had time
Right.
to sit and age and become even better. That's really cool. So it sounds like this wasn't a very stressful thing then. It was just very relaxing, very zen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at this point, we don't do anything that's too stressful. Sometimes the travel, we're forced into situations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Different parts of the world make it, different as far as the stress. Like South America in particular is real tough for sleep, just because a lot of times you're flying to the gigs, and
Mm-hmm.
by the time you play the show, it's say you go on at midnight, you get done with the show at 1:30, you're still wound up from the show. By the time you get back to the hotel, you end up with like 1 or 2 hours to sleep, and it's
Hmm.
time to go lobby call and go back to the airport because all the flights, whatever, magically appear, at 9 in the morning.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So, and you end up get switching like that. Whereas like in Europe, we have a bus, a nightliner bus, and
Hmm.
so we can sleep kind of, when we're not, uh, we can kind of wake up at like 2 in the afternoon and go in and mosey into the venue of the day, and they'll have a deli tray waiting for us. Get some little something to eat. Sit
Hmm.
around, kind of, brush your teeth and do your daily stuff, and then kind of warm up and do sound check and go to dinner, and it's kind of more of a relaxed thing. Uh,
Hmm.
and then whereas in the States, we have to get ourselves to the gigs sometime, as far as like when we're on tour and we have to handle our own equipment
Hmm.
and have people handle that and kind of be more hands-on with that a little bit more, depending on what's going on. But pretty much that's what how it goes normally is that, since it's nicer because we can play on our own equipment.
Yeah,
It's we play better that way, of course. But it's a little more work to do it that way.
for sure.
Yeah, so it kind of depends where we're going and how that goes.
Yeah. So I know we talked about it being a few years in between. Was there ever a point where you guys thought like, well, maybe this album may not come out or that it may take longer
Mm,
than you originally thought?
um, well, I never at this point I've learned no, never make a deadline because it just never works out. I
Hmm.
learned that pretty early on that it never because it's just studio scheduling or a band members can't do it because of this reason or that reason. There's always something that comes into play, or sometimes we just we're not ready with the parts. That's happened too, where we're still like working on the lyrics, for example. Like I'll be at song 9 or 10, and I'm like still coming up with them rather than rush. Like on the last album, we had an issue where we had Mark Lewis mixing the record, and
Hmm.
he had a certain window scheduled for it. It was like September of 2017, I think it was. And then uh, the guitarist at the time, one of the guitarists wasn't ready, and so
Hmm.
it pushed us back. And the producer guy, he had to go on and move on. Had another album to do, and he had to
Hmm.
kind of push on. So we didn't get to that
Oh
pushed us
no.
back like 6 months. you
Oh
know
wow.
yeah, and it was either wait for him or, yeah, I mean, we could try to do something else, but then it was, so we ended up waiting. We kind of had no choice, and then yeah, it gets done, but it just that things, just life and things drag it out, and you just kind of learn to accept it at this point.
Yeah. Well, it also eases, it sounds like it eases some stress too, because you're not like, oh no, I have, 6 months wait or I need to get
Right.
it in there.
Then we do other stuff in the meantime. We work on other things and try to get, you know
Hmm.
we made the album even better. I'm sure there was things that were perfected in that time that where they wouldn't have been there had we not had that time. So I just try to look at it as positive, and because it does buy us a little more time to make sure that we got everything that we want. And there's always last minute things that get added. uh,
Hmm.
there's usually a song that was kind of last minute, like even when I'm doing the drums, where I like, oh, let's go ahead and do this song. So that there's always kind of things like that.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
so
that's kind of nice because I know normally when after the album launches, usually, artists go back and they're like, oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that, but you already had that extra time.
right.
So
Yeah,
that
and
was
then
nice.
that still happens no matter what. I mean, there's that'll never stop happening, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, it makes it a lot better.
Hmm.
We learned, because we had that on our first album where we just didn't have the budget back then, and we were young kids, and kind of thinking that we knew it all. And the engineer at the time, we are trying to backseat drive, from do
Mm-hmm.
that, do that. And then he'd start working on that, whatever that problem was. And then we'd hear something else. Oh, what about, oh, we need that fixed too, and it just kind of drive him crazy with all these changes, and next thing you
Mm-hmm.
know, he's just throwing up his hands saying, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
because we're giving him 10 different directives at the same time. So, um, but yeah, we've learned, kind of how to do it at this time and do it at a relaxed pace. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're in a good spot as far as that goes.
Well, that's awesome. There's a free life lesson for everyone out there.
Uh,
When you're younger, you don't know everything, even though you think you do.
right. Definitely.
Did you try anything new on this album that you haven't tried before on anything previous?
Um, it's hard to say. I mean, musically there's always little tricks and things that we try to like perfect from each album, as time goes on, we lessons that we learn.
Mm-hmm.
um kind of trust in our engineers. At this point, it's kind of being open to advice, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. That's try to let go a little bit of the reins,
Yeah, that
little
definitely helps.
little bit, because uh we had that with our same situation with the same producer on our third album. We just kind of learned the lesson, just let him do his thing, and it'll be great. And then sure enough, that's what happened. So
Mm-hmm.
um kind of let the person whose job it is do their job rather than us trying to dictate for them to do their job.
Makes it easier, I think,
Yeah.
right?
So as far as this album, just being open to ideas and still getting what we want out of it too, and not sacrifice, because there were certain, like, the first song on the album, our engineer wanted us to do like blast beats and fast stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of fought him on it, and we're like, no, this song's supposed to be this way, it's not supposed to be. That's the whole point of it, is the intricacies within the slow. Even though it's kind of feels like a slower beat, there's like all kinds of little hi-hat parts and little ride cymbals and little
Mm-hmm.
stuff, that little bells and whistles going on, that it's still a fast song.
Mm-hmm.
You're not hearing it as a fast song. It's hard to explain, but just because of all the little bells and whistles in there. Um, and I really didn't realize it until I started doing all these interviews and seeing kind of some of the reviews that, people were surprised that we didn't come out of the, for the first song on the album being like real fast, and, kind of like, like the second song's kind of a faster song, and kind of what I'm talking about. So like
Mm-hmm.
at the time, I really didn't notice it because I'm, in the middle of it. To me, it was the first song, one of the first songs written, and I always kind of envisioned it as the opening track with the big punches and everything. To me, whoops, sorry. It seemed to me like it was kind of, that was the way it was supposed to be, and obviously it was, because it ended up coming out like that. But I think it might confuse people in the when they first hear the album, they think, oh, if this is the fast song, where are we going to go from here? Because they're expecting Monstrosity to be fast, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I look at it as like a roller coaster ride, and want dynamics as we go through the album. I
Mm-hmm.
want to just be stuck on one speed or one thing the whole album. And as usual, it's nothing. If you're a fan of Monstrosity already, you're gonna like this album. That's the way if you're a real fan, and like, you're gonna like this album too. We didn't put out a dance record. Yeah.
That would be interesting. I kind of like, I think that's why I listened to it a few times because when I heard the first song, I'm like, okay, this is like a little bit not what I was expecting, but it kept me in suspense. And then when I kept listening to the album, I'm like, okay, it felt like it all kind of went together.
Right.
So I really like that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like I said, I'm kind of in the middle of it, so it's all normal to me.
You're like, I don't hear it.
Yeah,
It's also like I've heard it
yeah,
so many times I can't critique myself.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with the album, and I think the band is too. So I think everybody's pretty much happy with what's going on, and we got more albums to come, hopefully. So we're already kind of starting to write for the next album and get ideas together. We don't have any full songs yet. We have I mean, a ton of ideas. So we're kind of already moving ahead, and um,
Well, that's positive.
yeah, we'll see what direction this next one takes. But I think because the previous album was kind of more collaborative. This album was kind of more a lot of my ideas. Like I wrote 9 of the 10 songs, and
Hmm.
kind of how we work is I'll like for my songs I'll send them over to Matt Barnes, my guitar player, and he'll uh he'll take my ideas and kind of make them better and like soup everything up, and then he'll send that back to me and I'll make suggestions and we'll kind of go back and forth like that. But the main original idea of the song is mine, for
Hmm.
9 of the 10 songs. So um the 10th song being his song, Fortunes Engraved in Blood, he ended up
Hmm.
giving that to me, and kind of we went, it was pretty much done for the most part. And uh but it was less like, overall the album was less collaborative in that respect, whereas I think the next album will be a little more collaborative. Like I'm open to the collaboration and doing it that way. So uh
Hmm.
but ultimately, it's got to be Monstrosity,
Hmm.
fall under what we would kind of, I mean, not that we do have definitely brackets that we don't want to go out of.
Hmm.
That I don't we wouldn't put out a dance record. um just wouldn't I
Gotcha.
wouldn't do that to our fans. Even if we wanted, we would just change the name of the band or do a different project, because everybody's got, at this day and age, everybody's got different projects and this and that. So if we really
Hmm.
felt the need to do a dance record, we could just do a different project and do it that way. I wouldn't, do our fans like that, basically.
I have to say, I would love to. I would, if you guys do put out a dance album, listening to it. I want to see what that sounds like.
Yeah.
So, one last question for you here. Is there anything you'd like to say to the fans that have started from the beginning with the band? Anyone who wants to see you when you on tour, or anyone just interested in taking a listen to the album?
Yeah, my suggestion is listen to the album multiple times, because I'm sure there's, like you were saying, there's different layers to it and kind of finding new things as you
Hmm.
listen. And um, I'm kind of close to it, so it's hard for me to judge. But that's always kind of been my thing. Is I've noticed with it, a lot of times music can be exposure,
Hmm.
like where you listen to it one time and it kind of, oh yeah, that sucks or whatever, and whereas the
Hmm.
case, like you listen to it a bunch of times and you find, it kind of grows on you, or you discover more things about it. um Kind of one example I was saying in a different interview is that, where it's kind of like when you hear the hit song on the radio and you go out
Hmm.
and buy the album for that hit song, and then you play the album a million times, and by the time you're finished with, several months go by or whatever, you hate the song that you originally liked because you wore it out, and the B song that you didn't like at the beginning is now your favorite song. Like there's so many albums that's happened to me where, like, because that's how I do it, like I listen to music a lot, and
Hmm.
I wear out, that's kind of one of my problems, I guess you could say, is that I wear an album out because I'll like something and then I'll just play it to death, to almost to the point where I can't listen to it anymore. So, but I think exposure and just giving it another chance. Listen to this album 10 times, 15 times, and then if you don't like it, okay, I'll give you, but give it a chance and actually like expose yourself to it.
Yeah.
It's like, how on the radio there's certain bands that like, how is this popular, and then like after years and years and years of it being forced down your throat on the radio, it's like, oh, this, every word, and
Yeah,
you
I've
don't
definitely
hate
been
it as
there
you don't
before.
hate it as much as you first did, kind of thing. And then of course there's songs that you just don't like no matter what. So,
Yep.
but exposure would be the key, and hopefully everybody can, if the first song throws you for a loop because it's not super blast beat the whole time, just give it a listen and listen to the rest, the other songs should, but even that song, like I said, there's so many little things going on in the song,
Hmm.
and it's not that far removed. So, um, but yeah, and other than that, I hope to see everybody on the road, and uh, we're looking to get back out. We got a lot, we're going to Europe April 18th. It's the first show. And then we got some US festivals planned, Maryland Death Fest, and some other stuff going on. They're going to Brutal Assault in the Czech Republic in August, and there's talk of a tour for the fall. So US
Busy,
tour.
busy.
Yeah. So hopefully we can get, the plan is to get back out and stay out. So uh, we'll see what happens. It's the plan.
Well, awesome. Well, for anyone interested, if this hasn't convinced you, I don't know what will. I love the album. It comes out on the 13th, so sorry everyone, you do have to wait a little bit. And it is coming through Metal Blade Records. To make it super easy, I put all the links underneath the video, so you just have to one click and you're right there.